All right, with Adrian, women's wrestling coach, head wrestling coach Cliff Cushard. Cliff, you guys just opened up last week your season with your home invitational. Had 10 placers as a team. How do you feel that the girls performed as a whole, and how did that tournament go as a whole as well?
It went really well. Technically, though, that wasn't the opener. That was our third competition for the season. But yeah, we've been building up the incoming freshmen to become more familiar with freestyle, because that's our biggest hurdle that we face, is that many of them come in having only wrestled folk style in high school, on their high school teams, and switching them over to freestyle takes some time. It's a whole different mindset change. But they're doing really well. We did have one champion. I think we had 2/3, several fourths, some fifths and sixths and so on. So they're getting there. Getting them up and prepared and ready in shape is always fun. But we build we want to peak at the end. We don't really want to peak early and then dip at the end. So we kind of work up at a steady pace, constant improvement and growth, and I think that's where we're currently sitting.
Yeah. How many years have you been here?
4.
4 years, okay. How have you seen the program grow, in that time? What things are you doing now that maybe you weren't doing when you first got here?
The main difference was, when I first got here, I was a volunteer assistant coach, and we didn't have a dedicated women's coach. So I took that role on for myself, but I couldn't give it full-time attention that it deserved. And so as the years have progressed, we took me from a volunteer assistant part-time to basically a full-time volunteer assistant. I was able to move my schedule around and then become a paid full-time head coach. So the progression has changed drastically. The numbers have gone up considerably over the years. We had 19 starting the season this year. We still have 19 technically. And I look to build us up to around 30, hopefully within another year or two. So we already are one of the better sized teams in the WCWA, and we're looking to continue to build on that.
That's what I was going to ask. The ideal roster size in the division, is it 30? The top teams, how many do they typically have?
Anywhere from 20 to 30, I'd say, is pretty normal right now. I think as a coach, ideally what you would have is a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior at each weight class. With 10 weight classes, that would get you at 40. I know that's unrealistic, but if you were to really lay it out in an ideal situation, I think that's what you have. We do have a very long season, so injuries become a factor. Our competitions start in October and don't end until February, so we actually have a little bit longer competition season than the guys do.
You talk about your schedule a little bit this year. Do you have more home events? What are the highlight events on the schedule for you guys, and then when do you want to peak? And
yeah, so we just had our home open, which was our first ever hosted tournament, which went really well, and we're very excited. We do have a duel coming up January 15th. You're going to get me on the date there. I think it's the 15th.
Okay.
It's a Tuesday night duel against Tiffin. We're going to use that as our senior night, so that'll be our first ever duel hosted. That was one of the things with not having a full-time women's coach. We weren't able to do a lot of tournaments here, and given the locations of our competitors, many of them are quite a distance away, and they weren't willing to travel. So finally we're getting some competitors nearby. Tiffin's not that far away. Gannon isn't too far away. Schools are adding at a rate of 10 to 15 per year right now. Women's wrestling is by far the fastest growing sport out there, and we should easily be, I think we're at around 50 teams as of today. I would expect that we'll double that and have 100 in about 3 to possibly 4 years.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the growth, because we've seen it on a national level, and in Michigan as well. Where do you see it going? I know that you said there's going to be growth. Where do you see it maybe as a sanctioned sport by the MHSAA? Do you see that as being something that happens in the near future? Do you see the WCWA evolving to NCAA status? What sorts of things do you see happening?
In the women's wrestling world right now, I guess let me start at the top and we'll work backwards. The WCWA formed, 16 years ago, something in that range, to give collegiate women teams an opportunity to compete and have a national championship. Uh, all these years, it's been a mix of NCAA, D1, D2, D3, and then NAIA and junior colleges. So the WCWA has been this overarching organization. Last spring, the NAIA gave women's wrestling official status. So they're starting to split off and have their own national championship. They're still allowed to be in the WCWA if they want to be, but I think they're heading in that direction. We've applied for emerging sports status in the NCAA, which is a first step to becoming officially recognized as a sport. It gives us some special, a little bit sort of a special, I'm trying to think of the word here, but a status that gives us a stepping stone to becoming an official sport. Because to be an official sport, you have to have, I believe they told us, 40 teams before they'll have a championship. So we've got roughly 20, I think it's 23 NCAA teams as of today, but that's where the growth has been happening, is on the NCAA side. So I think we'll probably be adding 5 to 10 teams per year, and we should get up to 40 rather quickly. We applied last year for emerging sports status. They did not grant it, which apparently is the standard procedure. So we reapplied this year, making some corrections to their comments. We anticipate that we may very well have that this next year. So at the collegiate side, we're growing quickly, we're spreading, we're splitting, so all the divisions are getting their own systems in place, which is where we want it to be. And then at the high school side, we're seeing more and more states add girls' state championships. I think 6 added this last year. Michigan, I've been involved in some conversations. I think we're on the cusp of adding a girls' state championship. That'll be, cross our fingers, hopefully that'll keep going here. But I think we'll have a girls' state championship soon. As far as a separate season, I think that's going to take some time to build up into. Obviously, we had, I think it was 376, again I'm going from memory here, I think it was 376 girls wrestling last year in high school against the boys. That's not enough for a whole season, obviously. So I think the starting point is to have a state championship with some regionals leading up to it, and then eventually grow to the point where we have districts leading into regionals, leading into state, and then maybe at some point in the future we end up with teams. Because obviously we have a lot of girls wrestling below high school level. And typically when they get to high school, they seem to drop out because especially the larger ones have a hard time competing against the boys in high school, and that's not really fair to them. Some of them are very talented wrestlers, very skilled athletes, and they need that opportunity to compete on a level playing ground. So I think, I think what we're going to see happening is once the girls are given an opportunity to have a state championship, that more and more will stick it through high school because they have a reason to do it. Right now they just don't have a purpose. They don't see anything to do, and we at the collegiate level need them to continue. We have thousands of girls wrestling below 8th grade in Michigan from what I've seen, and if we can keep those majority of those girls competing, they can get better and have that opportunity to compete in college. And then we as college programs are growing so fast that we need them to be there to help fill our ranks.
Yeah, and like you said, if there's thousands in the youth, and if 375 is that number in high school, no doubt if they're just wrestling girls, that number is going to jump drastically. Yeah. There's no doubt about it.
The states that have added girls' state championships have seen roughly a quadrupling of numbers.
Wow.
Within, I want to say it was 2 years. So if we had 376, and a couple of years ago we had over 500, we had almost 600. So it modulates from year to year. But if we've got under 400 now, if we add it and we get up to 1,500 or 1,600 wrestling in a season, that's a heck of a number change.
We had the MWA regional coaches meetings across the state a couple weeks back, right? And talking with coaches and looking at the minutes from those meetings, it seems unanimous across the board that every high school coach is on board with the women's wrestling movement. And things that they've talked about are, like adding a mat at tournaments just for girls to wrestle girls if there's no official schedule set yet. And down the road, adding that 5th mat to the finals and things like that. But overall, like I said, across the board, everyone sees the potential for this. They see how it helps the sport. They are willing to help girls wrestling, women's wrestling grow. What things can they do? Can people do to assist in that? What should they be aware of? What should we be doing? Things like that.
That's a tough call. Right now, getting the coaches on board, the high school coaches on board, is a big step because not that long ago we didn't have that support. So we've come a long way in a relatively short amount of time. Because I agree with you, the numbers I'm seeing are saying the same thing, that most of the high school coaches are seeing the value in it, and I think most of the club coaches had seen the value already. Hence why we have so many girls wrestling below high school level. The best thing I can say to that is that all the benefits that we have for the boys with wrestling, the girls get the exact same benefits: the self-confidence, self-defense, awareness, all those, the athleticism, all those things that we look for that the boys get out of the sport, the girls, the women get too. And so being a supportive parent would be the first step, because a lot of parents say, "Oh, I don't want my daughter wrestling." That's fine, but why not? Really think through why don't you want that to happen? You'd let your son wrestle, but not your daughter. Why? Most of the girls that I've worked with over the years, and I've been in this a long time, they love it. Their passion for the sport is right up there with the top guys. They don't do this because they just feel like it. They do it because they love what they're doing. So being a supportive parent, being a supportive club coach, being a supportive high school coach, middle school coach, whatever level they're at, keep them going, keep encouraging them, because while they might not be the best at the moment, there's no reason they can't be. It's like any beginner. Whatever level they start at, they're going to take time to get there. You wouldn't push that boy aside and say, "You know what, you just started this year, don't keep doing this because you're no good at it." You tell that kid to keep going, because that's how we get better. That's where we get there. And a lot of the girls need that encouragement as well, especially if they're wrestling boys, because they're going to look like they're not as good compared to the boys in many cases, but yet they might actually be better. They're very coachable for the most part, very athletic, and being supportive in that way. And I think just making sure that all the levels up, from parents to club coaches to middle school, high school, let the MHSA know that this is something you think we ought to have and ought to support.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the insight and taking some time. Do you got anything else that we forgot, or?
Not that I can think of.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.